Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the DM Roundtable for May 2020. This is a chance for patrons and I to get together and discuss topics in tabletop RPGs. By sharing our ideas, thoughts, and experiences, we can all become better DMs or GMs. DM Roundtable discussions are open to all patrons at every level of patreon.com/RogueWatson. You don't even have to be an active participant. You can jump in and here and lurk to your heart's content. We are glad to have you. Shout out to Platinum patrons Andrew, Richard, Joe, Will, Tiny Dancer, Nick, Andy, Chris, and Alberto. And Gold patrons RPG Papercrafts, Charming Grenade, Pretty Boy, Nima, Marco Stade, Vicente, Gilberto, Shane, K, Cert 2B, Adam, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Ross, Limpy Spuds, and Jerome. Thank you all very much for your support. Now we're doing something a bit special for this month's topic since May 2020 is our 1-year anniversary of the DM Roundtable series. And we're going to definitively rank all 15 of the 5e hardcover campaign adventure books, beginning with the Starter Kit adventure up through Descent into Avernus. Joining me for this month's DM Roundtable, we have Alberto.
Hello.
Sean, aka Cert 2B.
Evening.
Sam.
Morning.
Jerome.
Good morning.
Jordan.
How's it going?
And Corey.
How's it going?
True to the name of the super lurker, Corey. I boosted your volume to see if we can hear you. So I've got the Google Sheet open. We've got them in release order, and what we're going to be doing is talking about all of the 5e adventure books chronologically, and then determining where they should go on our list. And we can use whatever factors we want, just overall structure, the way it uses the materials, the maps, the art, the writing, the characters, all of the above, ideally. And I guess I should go over which ones I chose. So we've got all of the major campaign adventure books, plus some of the ones that are about half length. So we've got the Starter Kit and the Essentials Kit, which kind of had half-size adventures. I kept the Tyranny of Dragons books separate because they were released separately, which is Hoard of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. And I also kept Waterdeep Dragon Heist and Dungeon of the Mad Mage separate because they were also released separately, even though that one's also kind of a 1-2 punch. I did include Acquisitions Incorporated because at this point, Acq Inc. has pretty much been canonized in the 5e D&D universe, and it's got a very, it's got a great adventure, but it also has a length adventure that's at least as long as a Phandelver, if not longer. I did not include the more heavily licensed stuff like the Stranger Things adventure, and I did not include any of the books that were more like source books that just included like level 1 introductory adventures, so like Ravnica, Eberron, and the Critical Role Wildmount book. So that leaves us with 15 books we are going to discuss. We are going to start with the starter set, which is Lost Mine of Phandelver. I'd ask you all to raise your hand if you enjoy it. I can't see your hands, so I'm just going to put it out there. Who likes the Phandelver adventure? Who has run the Phandelver adventure?
Yeah, certainly.
I imagine most folks have at this point.
I've actually run that one a couple of times.
Funny enough, I haven't run it at all.
Ooh. Prepare to be dazzled. Sam, you were first. What do you like about Phandelver?
It's very simple. It's nicely structured, so it does exactly what it's supposed to, and it's a great way to get people started. Both the times I've run it once, played it twice, and each time it's been with people who've been brand new to D&D, and it's great at introducing everything that you'd want people to get introduced to the first time they play D&D.
Is it just the what is it about? Like the balance of, like, Jerome, you also jumped in about like in Phandelver.
Well, I liked it, yeah, but part of it was towards the end it started getting really, really, approaching TPK.
Oh. I had a fun experience with a flame skull with my party. Sean, did you say you ran it multiple times?
Yeah, it's I kind of like the formatting of it. In particular, it feels like it's a good segue into some of the other adventures. Some of the ones like Storm King's Thunder, the campaign doesn't really start till level 5, so it's a good segue as an introductory one to get the players into the full campaign for some of the ones where it kind of has you do side missions up until the main campaign starts. So it's a very good segue for that.
That's something we're going to probably discuss quite a few times, is how not good the low-level onboarding is for a lot of these campaign adventures, in terms of actually having meaningful stuff for the players to do right at level 1, which I think is a good point. I think Phandelver is probably the best at starting the players off at level 1 and making them have actual meaningful things to do, the way it kind of layers in the adventure. I mean, you've got a level 1 dungeon, classic goblins right off the bat. Then you've got a very well-developed town with multiple NPCs and really multiple plot hooks and quests from those NPCs. You've then got a level 2 dungeon, which whatever it's called, Tressendar Manor, yeah, the Red Brand hideout is still like one of everybody's favorite dungeon designs. It's got a really cool mix of secret doors and creepy monsters and factions going on and different passages and layouts. It's just a really, really well-designed dungeon. And that's just level 2. And then level 3, you get to split off and you get Thunder Tree and you've got Old Owlwell and all these other different things you can do. And it all comes together with a basically mega dungeon at the climax. It's really got everything, and it's really well designed. It was my group's first experience for D&D 5e, and I have nothing but good things to say about it.
It even includes the actual, when it says Dungeons and Dragons, it has both. And like not every single one of them does.
Yeah.
And for a starting adventure to include that right off the bat is awesome. And the fact that like I don't even know how many DMs I've talked to, but they sit there and say, I run that into Princes of Apocalypse. I run that into Storm King's Thunder. I run that into, and it's just, it's so flexible that it seems like everybody uses it just to begin.
Yeah, that's very true. So the real question is, how good is Phandelver compared to the others? And it's kind of a tricky comparison because it ends at level 5. It's a good jumping on point, but would it still be that good if it tried to go all the way to 12 or 15 as some of the others do? So it is tricky to compare that to some of these others that are obviously much longer, but giving it what it does, I mean, I'm thinking it's got to be top 5, right?
I would put it either at 5 or 6 in my opinion. I don't know about everybody else.
We also have to see how many of that that starter set. It's 1 through 5, but we have to see which books are within the range of 1 through 5, because there are some books where just they have certain schedules. Like for example, Out of the Abyss. I don't see the starter set incorporating the Out of the Abyss, but you may have to pick and choose of at level 5 you get basically ambushed by a group of drow, stuff like that. It depends on which book you're trying to implement it to, because I can see it definitely for Storm King's Thunder and possibly the Yawning Portal if you're trying to do a high level dungeon.
Yeah.
But where would you rank it? Would you rank it top 4, top 5? Would you rank it somewhere between 6 and 10? 11 to 15? Where would you drop it? Not where does it end? But
because it's hard to say, because when I actually saw the box itself, because I hold the box before, and when I saw the starter set, I always thought of things that starter sets. I'm like, oh great, I'm only gonna get 10% of what Dungeons and Dragons. That's when I first started off. The advertisement for the box didn't catch on to it. It was basically get this stuff and get that stuff, and I felt limited. And I heard so much about Dungeons and Dragons where it's so much freedom. And what I'm hearing from you, throughout the years, it just it caught on to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So I see now what you're saying about how awesome.
And normally, I would agree with you about a lot. That's how, and that's kind of how this one is. You know, it comes with its own rule set, like it's a booklet, and it just kind of pares down the already fairly, not to malign it, but the fairly simplified 5e rules into even more. Just like here are the basic things you need to know for just like tier 1 play, for example. But the fact that the adventure is so good, like it's way better than it has any right to be, because it was like their first thing out of the gate in terms of getting people hooked on D&D. And it's not, I guess the only thing is it does use like simpler quote unquote monsters. It obviously doesn't use like the full breadth of the monster, but again, it's only tier 1. Like you can't really use a lot of fancy stuff anyway, but it's just such a well-constructed adventure that even people that are very well versed in D&D and would have no need for a quote unquote starter set, if you want just a good tier 1 adventure, like I would still recommend Phandelver as one of the best ones you can get for 5e. That's got to put it, for
Yeah,
me,
same.
it's easy top 5.
Yeah, I say probably B5. Went from like here and went from like all the good improvements stuff like it, because not many adventures will go like past level 10. That's so knowing that like a tier 5, that's where you get like most of your low level interactions and stuff. I say it's gonna be a 5 for.
Does anybody have a problem with putting it at 5 for now? Tentatively, again, these are not permanent. We're going to go through after, things will shuffle around for sure, but it's just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I guess the one caveat for me is technically it might be a little higher than 5, but I'm only saying that because of the ones on the list. I only have 5 of them.
Yeah.
So that skews it a little bit.
And it might end up getting bumped up as we talk about other adventures and realize like, oh yeah, I think Phandelver is better than that one. All right,
let's start it there.
Yeah, so
drop it there.
I'm gonna tentatively drop it right at number 5 for Lost Mine of Phandelver. All right, the next one is Hoard of the Dragon Queen, which was the first major storyline out of 5e, which was called Tyranny of Dragons, which was all about the rise of Tiamat, the cult of the dragon, which was teased a little bit in the Phandelver adventure. That's when they started doing this like shared storyline basically between all their adventures, which has always been kind of a neat Easter egg. I didn't jump into D&D until after this was already out there, and I believe that the first book was actually written like while they were still finalizing the 5e rules, which is why it came out, fairly early on in D&D's lifespan, and I think is why it also came out in a two-parter. And we're gonna actually look at these separately. Has anybody actually played through any of this book?
I have.
Oh, thank
I'm
goodness.
playing it at the moment.
Oh, nice. Alberto, take us away first about Tyranny of Dragons.
I have played this book 4 times, and
4 times.
I gotta 4 times. Well, because it's a very rough book because it's not a good book for like new, and I wasn't when I played this because I came from 3.5 and to this, and I was like, wow, this doesn't give you a lot. Like if I give this to like one of my players that want to be a DM, they're gonna have a tough time because the encounters like you're supposed to like, so there's an encounter where you're at a castle being besieged by kobolds and a half dragon, and they have the princess captive, and it's I'm sorry for spoilers.
Yeah, we're gonna be spoiling all these adventures, so caveat to everybody.
yeah, and so like there's players who are like, oh, we can fight this half dragon, and like, no, you can't. This half dragon is a CR7, but you can't tell them that. It's like you're supposed to like, it's like guide them to accept their doom in an aspect. And I have a rough time with the book. It's not, I like Hoard of the Dragon, kind of my low bar. Like it's around my 10th or 15th category. It's just because it's not newcomer welcome. It's like if you toss somebody into Annihilation, but you just put them in a tune first.
Well, to be honest, they actually didn't. They just gave them this was made during the what's that called? The next phase.
Yes.
The actual development of
the company didn't even know the rules that well.
Yeah,
admittedly.
that's how you get a big storybook published. Like right when your rule set comes out, is you give somebody just like the bones of what you've got going, and it sounds like it suffers for it. Sam, you said you've been running it right now.
I'm actually playing in it rather
Playing
than
in
running it.
Okay.
And I am not enjoying it.
Oh no.
Yeah, it's not like that common expect because like I had my play and that book that was my first time I ever like homebrew like at like session 2. Homebrewed so much to keep the story in cohesive. Like it's
Oh, wow.
just it's that's how much glue you have to put in that book.
The bits of it that I've enjoyed so far are the bits that my DM has homebrewed.
Mm.
The stuff that he has done as the book is just uninteresting. Like we're not too far into it. We're doing the sort of the main travel with the caravan, but
Yeah, there's a whole chapter that's just like random encounters, isn't it? You're just on a caravan.
yeah, it's rough.
Oh, God.
Are the hooks bad? Is there just not a cohesive plot that they connect very well? Is it just patchy? What is
a little bit of both? Yeah, the hooks aren't great, and there's just the story is
Yeah.
we're traveling for 2 months. Here's some random encounters that don't mean anything and have no bearing on the overall storyline, and you're still not quite sure why you're going wherever you're going. So it's just like I don't know why I'm here, don't know why I'm going somewhere,
Having an
and
existential
I'm
crisis.
just fighting random things.
It did look like, and I reviewed this one a while ago, but it looked like it at least had a strong opener. Because aren't you in a town that is like attacked by a dragon and an army, or is that just a mess?
No, that's it. It was fun. Like it was a fun encounter, but it doesn't seem to link up to anything. It's
Okay.
you arrive in the town, fight the things off, and they go, "Oh yeah, can you go and see where these people are coming from?" And then you're supposed to go to their camp, and then you see their camp, and then you go back to the town, and the town's like, "Okay, cool. Can you deal with them?" So you go back to the camp, and they do some stuff in the camp, and then you go back to the town. And they go, "Cool. Well, you didn't deal with them all because some of them are doing this. Maybe go and follow them." And then you go and meet up with them and join like a great big trade caravan that they're hiding in, and then see where they're going.
So
Yikes.
instead of the story feeling like it progresses, it just continues to circle back to this hub, which doesn't have any bearing on the actual story past this is where it started.
Yeah.
Got it.
So
Because when I reviewed it, when I looked at it to see am I going to buy this one or Rise of Tiamat, I looked at them both and I said, this doesn't feel that coherent and it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere. So I just passed on both of them. Like I have every other one that you're showing on this screen. I own a physical copy. Those two, I just said they're not good. Like I've heard from people that they just aren't good. That when they played it, they haven't enjoyed it. And when I read it, I was like,
So
no, thank
you
you.
can definitely tell they're sort of getting their feet wet and working out where to go.
Yeah.
Right.
What would you do if a dragon is attacking a town? They said, run away.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
gone.
I'm
Yeah,
level
it's
1
like-
character. No thanks.
Yeah, exactly. I'll let the level 10 guys come out.
It's the same question of, hi, here's a Tarask. At that point, when you're level 1.
All right. Are we comfortable
like
dropping this
Spider-Man.
one? Do we need to drop it at the very bottom or just kind of bottom-ish? What do we think?
The bottom.
13.
I was gonna say 14 or 15.
Yeah, it'll be down the bottom somewhere.
Surprisingly, there's still one of the lowest out of all of them. You'd be surprised.
So I'd drop it down there and we can move it later.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, 14 for now. Well, this one's going to be even trickier because most folks play through Hoard of the Dragon Queen before Rise of Tiamat because that's part 2. But what do we think about essentially just part 2 of that same storyline? Because I think where's the break? Is it like level 7 or something?
Yeah.
You finish level 8, is it?
Okay.
Yeah, level 7 and start level 8 in Rise. If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Has anybody played any of that content?
I have. So the Rise of Tiamat, it's a good book, and like it introduces all your different chromatic dragon. And if you're a really like RP guy and like instead of like a hack and slash, this is a perfect book for you. Like it's like it depends on how you go in the encounter, because again, you're a dragon, like a red dragon, like they're chaotic in nature, but they are mischievous. It's good to role play like a dragon because each of them have their own personalities, and you can basically like be this like pompous snob of like thinking I am the top of the world. I am basically a fair run. And it's good to show like basically your players like what are the different types of dragons and what are their personalities, like how can you interact with them, and also the weaknesses and stuff. And I enjoyed it a much because you go to most of the different layers, and I've run it out as ways like basically the chromatic dragons don't like each other. Like none of them are like they're trying, like most of them are trying to like basically like band together as the dragon cultists are trying to raise Tiamat from the nine hells. And so that's why the chromatic dragons are at that point. They are like, yeah, we hate each other, but but we're more scared of Tiamat than anything else. So I guess we're just gonna have to be banded by fear.
Okay, so they're actually like good notes on how to roll, and these all have their own like separate dungeons. Is that kind of the main quest? You're just going to kick a bunch of dragons' asses?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, it's got some redeeming qualities over the first one then. I don't know how. I mean, the tricky thing is it starts at level 8, right? Like, so you're automatically either starting people at a high level if you just wanted to play that one, or you're maybe transitioning like Fandelver into that if that ends up being a better starter, or the Essentials Kit, or something else. So I could see putting Rise of Tiamat higher, but probably not much.
It's right above the dragon.
Okay.
It's because the thing is like you're still fighting classes, and like like at level 8 you're fighting a bunch of like the enemies don't progressively get better. They just get more. There's more quantities of them.
Oh no. That's good for
They're
the sorcerers.
Yeah, there's just more quantities of them, and then like it's because there's a bunch of dragon running around basically converting people. Join their dragon cult. Hail Tiamat. Praise her be. And I feel like I'm just an inquisitor trying to execute like just a heresy out of people. I'm playing Warhammer 40K.
All right, so we'll put Tyranny of Dragons near the bottom for sure. Princes of the Apocalypse. I obviously have a lot to say about this one, but I want to hear from all of you first.
This is the campaign that I'm currently running for 2 different groups.
God damn, Sam, you're getting on top of
so
it.
I've got four sessions a week at the moment. So
holy crap!
Good times.
I thought I had a lot.
Do you do this professionally?
No.
Okay.
Well, I'm playing in 2, running 2. So
Gotcha.
Wow.
But yeah, it's
this is when you're DMing.
Yeah. I'm doing it for 2 different groups. One of the groups, it was the first time they'd ever played. Well, two of the 3 players, and then the other group, 5 players, all sort of come together. We played through Fandelver together, and then I switched with the DM and ran Princes for them.
Okay. I feel like Princes has a really bad introduction, but once you get going into the actual like elemental mega dungeon, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. The first couple of levels are rough. Both the groups I've got quite enjoy sort of like role playing and exploration. So having like quite the small sandbox of the Desserin Valley is quite good for them. But yeah, once you get into the dungeon, it's just a lot of fun. There's a lot going on. You get all of the major sort of monsters. It gives you a really good broad spectrum of magic items and monsters and traps and skills and everything that you sort of want out of it. It gives you a really good look into everything, in my opinion.
If you like dungeons, then holy crap, we put dungeons in your dungeons attached to other dungeons with some more dungeons beneath that. Like it's pretty incredible, and it almost to the point where it's a little confusing, and I had to put up like some fake gates to like stop my players from going into places they probably shouldn't. Yeah, because that design can be a little bit of a headache from a DM standpoint. I think the main plot is total bullshit. The whole like there's this, I don't even know, political like team that's been kidnapped and like whatever. Basically, once you start introducing the cults and then the cultists actually start like releasing WMDs in cities, like that becomes a lot more interesting and compelling. But really, it's just an excuse to like go dungeon crawling, and it's got really, really cool dungeon designs. Like you could, one of the coolest things about Princes is even if you weren't going to run this campaign, I think you could still get a lot of mileage out of just using those dungeon designs. Like the maps are gorgeous, the themes, the fact that you've got the surface level and the like medium cult level, and then the really crazy like elemental dungeon. There's basically 3 dungeons for each of the 4 elemental cults, and then there's another one that connects them all together. It's pretty cool, but story-wise, I think it leaves a lot to be desired. You really have to, as a DM, I think, bring a lot of the story in yourself.
For me, it kind of falls right between somewhere between the starter set and Rise of Tiamat. It's somewhere in that 6 through 12 range.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because it's an upgrade from the last 2, but again, it's the same problems that we talked about before, where it's cultists,
Yeah.
keep getting pulled out of town to go back to the central hub, just to go back to a different form of the dungeon, which they all connect.
Yep.
The map's amazing. Encounters, I love the different spots around the valley. And I thought, like, encounter-wise, they definitely was awesome. That's one of the reasons I got it. And I sat there and was going, to have the enemy be these elementals and then introduce the Genasi as a playable race, like even that had a cohesive feel to it where I was going, okay, that's cool. So for me, it's definitely something where I was like, okay, I would definitely put it in front of the last 2, but it doesn't, for me, whatever reason, the story just falls short of the starter set.
Yeah, for sure. I think the story
Encounter-wise, dungeons, awesome.
Yeah, I agree. One tip, one note I will also put: the air crockeras when you're at the wind elemental place.
Oh yeah.
That is a tricky place. Like you have to know your 3D. Like if you're playing on like an actual
Enjoy doing
table,
that.
yeah, 3D combat. It is such a nightmare.
Yeah.
That was a time I was happy with doing Theatre of the Mind, because trying to run that with miniatures would have been a nightmare.
Get some bits of string and hang it from the ceiling. What do we think of smack dab in the middle, number 9 for now? Again, this is all tentative until we start. It starts. The first half of doing this is easy, and then the second half starts getting trickier as the spots start filling up.
I'd put it higher, but that's me.
10.
I know my players, whenever I ran this particular one, we had an absolute blast, but I had homebrewed a ton of crap for it, make it a little bit more open and manageable. Because one of the other things that I didn't necessarily like is some of the stat blocks for some of the cultists seemed weak. They seemed absolutely non-threatening whatsoever.
Hey, that's a running theme in all of Monster Manual.
Yeah. So I had actually made character sheets for essentially each of the cultists and the cultist types, essentially making them like NPCs from like level 1, including a couple levels higher. So essentially, as the players are sort of fighting the cultists are also fighting each other, and they're kind of quote unquote leveling up. So as they go, it basically gave them free reign of the entire map instead of needing to put those invisible walls up.
Okay.
Now that put a ton of overhead.
It's a lot of work
in terms of setup, but it was worth it, in my opinion, in terms of how it played out, because my players absolutely loved it whenever they had essentially free reign of everything.
Yeah,
it was basically an MMO setup at that point.
I mean, modability is definitely a factor. Obviously, that's a factor in every D&D adventure, but some of them are more easily moddable than others, for sure. All right, we need to keep this going. Out of the Abyss, also known as the only major 5e adventure that has not been adapted to Roll20 yet, I believe.
Yes.
I'm not sure why that one specifically has been left out, but
have you looked at the maps on that one?
Yes, I have. They're weird.
Yeah. I played it like once as a DM and a player, and it's very theater of the mind. This one.
Yeah.
Very theater of the mind.
It has a really cool start with the caveat that your players have to be okay with like, you're starting off as prisoners, basically. Obviously spoilers for all this stuff, but you're starting off as prisoners of the drow in the very beginning, which is, I think, a neat hook. And I like the concept that you are like escaping from like you start off in the bowels of the Underdark, and your whole goal is to make it out of there. I think that's actually a pretty strong narrative hook. And then, of course, they add and it's kind of a touristy journey through. You're gonna meet the
Right.
I don't think you go into
With
the Drow
all your
City yet, but
NPC
yeah,
characters
there's like
pushing you to the different spots.
there's the Kuatua
Yeah,
town, and there's the Darrow, and all these.
That would be your nightmare.
Yeah, I would say like because like
Yeah.
what was different like out of the Abyss and Tomb of Annihilation's NPCs, because you're gonna in Tomb of Annihilation you have NPCs as guides and stuff, but out of the Abyss you're heavily reliant on your NPCs at the first level, and that's what sucks. And what's like out of the Abyss, like, well, I would say you can play it now because they're in a DM's guild. There's wonderful guides to help you out with like basically to run the first session of like
shout out to DM's Guild for all of these products. Honestly, there's a lot of great content. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's where like if like where you like, oh cool, like can you cast magic? No, because like there's an anti-magic field inside the prison, stuff like that. And it's just like small things that you didn't think of. You're like, wow, I sometimes I need like a second or third point of view to actually help me out to build a proper first session.
The most awkward thing I find about Out of the Abyss is that I like the first half, as awkward as that is. The escape from Underdark, I think, is cool. And then there's a really awkward part halfway through where you escape from the Underdark. You're like, hey, we did it. But then you're like, oh, yeah, we did kind of see like the Kuatua summoning Demogorgon, and that's probably, something bad will alert the authorities. And then the authorities are like, hey, you've been in the Underdark. Maybe you should go back down there. And they basically combine Alien with Aliens. It's like you've gotten out of the threat, you've escaped, but now you got to go back in there, and you're the experts, and you got to go in. And there's an awkward part in the middle where it's literally like, I swear it says
almost
this in the
feels like they were trying to mash a sequel in the same book.
Like they wanted to split it up between a Hoard of the Dragon Queen and a Rise of Tiamat, but put it in one box. And at one point, they're even like, "Hey, if your heroes want to go off and do other adventures between here, like that's fine." I'm like, "Wait, what? This is supposed to be a complete like campaign book." So the second half isn't nearly as strong to me. It's just go down there and beat up the demons. Versus the first half where it was like, we're escaping from the Underdark. Like, I think that with the drow like hunting us the whole time, like that seemed like such a strong hook. And then the second half didn't seem nearly as strong to me.
I ran the first half and my players loved it, but they didn't want to go back.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
just told the high level guys to go take care of it.
Every encounter that you come across is sort of higher than you'd expect it to be difficulty wise, so I can't see any reason you'd want to go back in as a player. It's like everything is trying to kill me.
Yeah. That's one of the few adventures that actually I think goes all the way up to maybe 15-ish, whereas a lot of them stop around 12.
I think it's 13.
13? Oh, okay. I do think you get to actually fight either Orcus or Demogorgon, but they do that bullshit thing where it's like they depower them or something.
No, actually, you're playing like a kaiju battle. You take care.
Oh, is that?
Take over them to play them.
Okay, so it's like Storm Kings then, where you like drink giant potions and become giants.
No. It's like you.
Or you just play as the actual stat block?
You play this. I'll play a Demogorgon. You guys.
Oh, that's okay. We're all 8 years old playing action figures. All right.
It just seemed that way.
Yeah.
It's a suggestion, like, make it even more interesting.
They want to have these big epic things at the end, but they don't have the content to get the players there. So they're like, all right, well.
I think what happens, like, or at least what it feels like, is you almost had two different development teams. One going, we want to do something with demons in the Abyss, and somebody else going, we want to do something with the Underdark.
Yes.
And then, like, Chris Perkins was like, fuck it, let's do them together. That's kind of cool.
And let's just throw the Wonderland theme into it too.
Right, and so
which
like
I like
there's
that part.
Oh, cool! It was cool.
Yeah.
But like, there's things I really like about the second half, but because it's so disconnected from the first, it's hard to get people to buy into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you need like a second story hook to get into the second half because nobody really wants to do it. But the second half is really really good. Like there's this whole scene where you're messing with the plant people, and the plant people have this way weird situation going on in their little nest, and that's awesome. Or if you're running away from the gnolls and Orcus, that area is really cool because there's like this mechanist thing. So each of the areas has their own individual encounters that are pretty interesting. And the fact that you can go to Menzo Baranzan where all the drow are,
Mm.
like there's just all these parts in the second half where you're almost sitting there going, it almost feels like you're about to fall into the Drist novels, but you don't because there's all this abyss thing going.
Yeah, that's true. And then they did the demon thing later with Descent into Avernus. Like they should have just done a pure Underdark thing. I think there's enough content there without having to make it be invaded by demons.
Mixed.
The
Yeah.
Underdark, it's such a wonderful place. It has so much, like it's a whole different world underground, and like it should have been, yeah, you're right. It should have been separate. Like demons and Underdark would have completely separate. Like I understand there are pockets of rift, like there are like leading to like the elemental planes and stuff. But like when I ran this and I'm like, I was like, yeah, like my players they didn't want to fight out of the abyss.
Mhm.
And so when I actually my players to play Descent into Avernus, their impacts happen. I'm like, cool, yeah, the Demigorgon and Arcus fought each other, yeah, but now you're gonna see one of them now one of these days.
All right, Out of the Abyss. Do we feel comfortable putting that between Princes and Rise of Tiamat somewhere?
Yeah, I feel good with that. It's for me. It's again somewhere around the 7 to 11 range.
Or do we think it's better than Princes?
I think Prince's is pretty good. So I'd say 10 or 11, but again, that's one person's opinion.
Yeah.
I mean,
So I would put Princes above it.
Jerome, what are you saying?
the beginning's pretty cool. I mean, it's got a good, beginning, but
Yeah, yeah. I mean, maybe 10 or 11 right now. Let's look at a 10. Let's just see what it looks like at 10.
yeah.
Okay. Hey, the color schemes kind of match too. All right. After some disparaging comments or middling comments, we have now reached Cursive Strawed. Now, this one is almost unanimously considered still one of the best 5e adventures that Wizards has ever done. Who's played Strahd? Oh no.
So I don't want to do spoilers on the poll that I put out because I put out a poll the same time that you did.
Mhm.
But this poll, the stats that came back perfectly when I took out outliers of the random people that were like, I'm going to make that a 14, or someone that was like, that's a 9. Cursive Strawed and Tomb of Annihilation were tied not only in due with rankings, the exact number, but even in terms of the variance, which is very surprising from a statistical point of view.
Has no
And
one
so
really
for
played
me-
Strahd here?
No, I like Cursive Strawed. I would put it 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
I played Strahd as a player, and these were one of my moments like in Dungeons & Dragons where like I had it's not the book, it's just I had a bad experience with the
With
book.
the DM or
DM,
with the book?
with the DM, with the DM.
Okay.
I didn't like the book at all. It's just because I never got to experience it at like what it looks. There was so much, and it's just I want to put it up there. I want to play it again. I really want to have another group play it again. But like it's just that book has still like lingering taste, and that's why I put it really down for my category.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh,
that'll
were
do
you
it
the
for sure.
14?
Yeah, I'm the 14. I'm the 14. Like
Yeah,
I put this,
you were the outlier.
I put the book down because it's just again bias. Like the poll's a little bit like sometimes you have your putting like stuff. It's kind of hard to have like your own like devil's advocate. But
Yeah.
I mean,
I love the book. Like I love Strahd because Strahd like it's just like he's such a benevolent like he's the big bad like the big bad dude. Like you all want to drink like he doesn't kill you on first sight. Like he talks to you like a normal person. And when I'm like reading the book, and I'm like, it's a good book. I love it. I love how like the tarot cards, what they do too.
I actually don't like the tarot card element. I mean, thematically, it's fun to like, hey, where is your big item gonna be? Where is, I forget what it is, Strahd's location in the castle and that kind of thing. As a DM, there's no way in hell I would leave that shit up to random chance like that. Like, I would want to meticulously devise, like, okay, knowing my group and knowing what I like about this adventure, where do I want to put this? Or I would bullshit and, let the players draw tarot cards, but they're getting the same fucking thing every time because that's what I'd want to have happen. I don't like, and I'm going to have this complaint again when we talk about like Waterdeep Dragon Heist, when they give you all these different versions of the same story. It's like, just tell your fucking story like how you want it. And then I, as the DM, can make those adjustments, depending on how it fits my story and how I want to tell it. But yeah, like the seasons thing and Dragon Heist, that doesn't work for me at all. And the tarot thing, thematically, it's cool, but I wouldn't actually put all that stuff up to chance.
Yeah.
Like, here's the magic item that you need, and you're going to get it either in the beginning of the game or in the end of the game. Go ahead, Drum.
Actually did that. Sad, I actually did that. I got the tarot cards, and then I looked at them, and I said, "Nope."
Yep,
I
exactly.
shuffled. I had the players shuffle them, but I had left out the cards and put them in the beginning.
Okay.
I just did a switcheroo. I was just like, "Nah, I'm sorry. That feels bad."
I feel you.
But
I mean,
I wrote down what it was.
it's got a pretty good story, I think, which is basically kind of uncovering. It's all about its villain, right? Like that's kind of a good hook. It's Strahd, as Alberto was saying, is a cool villain. He'll actually show up and talk to the players quite a bit. He's basically an immortal vampire, so he DGAF and just will absolutely chat you up. And the whole story is basically about finding out his backstory and how to kill him. And you kind of go along this fairly linear path along from different towns and dungeons and areas, and you actually go past the castles, like right at the beginning. You kind of go past that; it's looming over you, and you go experience all this stuff, get to the temple, and basically get all the things you need. And then that's it, almost structured similarly to Tomb, where it's a standard adventure but with a very limited area, which I always like as a DM. Here's all the places you can go, but you have to go to one of these places. Like, that's kind of how I like to structure things, especially as somebody who obviously plays on a virtual tabletop. I can't just pull maps out of my ass. And then it ends up at Castle Ravenloft, which is a really fucking cool dungeon. It's that giant mega dungeon. There's like 5 floors or something, similar to the way Tomb of Annihilation is structured, where you've got your adventure and then it ends in a mega dungeon. So I do think it's really strong. It's, I think, the only one on here that technically doesn't take play. Ravenloft is a different like plane, right, than the Forgotten Realms?
Yeah.
Yes.
Barovia
Yeah.
is kind of like a space in between. It's almost like the Shadowfell. This is the way I've heard people explain it.
Okay.
Another thing, you got like as DMs, like you got to be careful because like Strahd can be killed really early on if somebody casts Daylight.
Stupid
Like
vampires.
that's how our Strahd died. Like we killed our Strahd at level 4.
Well, he comes back, doesn't he? Or no?
No, he died. We put a stake in his heart, and it was just game over. We were halfway through the book. We're like, holy crap, we just killed a big bad dude.
That's weird. That doesn't seem like it should be possible for Strahd, but yeah.
Exactly, and so like when I hear other DMs, and I'm like, yeah. So when he casts Daylight, basically it is so like because of Barovia is like such in the Shadow Realm, Daylight doesn't cast at all. Like that spell just basically negates. And I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, that sounds perfect. I really don't want to kill him at level 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think as a DM, you just say no to that.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I think that kind of definitely influenced your. I think
Yeah,
that particular spell is what dropped it to a 14. Like if your DM had read up on it a little bit more, and kind of like from me reading the manual of it, it almost sounds like you can only kill Strahd in his castle, and you can only do it with certain things in a certain way. So you guys doing that, it should have made him vamp out in terms of a mist, but to straight up say that it killed him,
Vamp out.
yeah, exactly.
Are we thinking
that
top
that pun
three?
was intended.
Top three for Strahd.
Yeah, definitely.
Again, I
Yeah,
would
I
say
agree
one or
with that.
two.
I
I
give it.
ranked it on number 1, but hey,
Ooh. I could put it in a
Well-
tentative number 1.
my players made it about themselves though. I actually it was just like they were ignoring Strahd, and Strahd was pissed off. No,
Strahd-
because I actually put their family members in the mist, and they
Ah.
were like, "Oh, my long lost grandfather. Oh, wow."
Cursive Strawed also has a really good level 1 starter dungeon. The
Are you
Death
talking
House.
about the Death
Yeah.
House?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boy.
It's just a classic, like, kind of creepy haunted house thing, and I think it's just really well done for if you need to start at level 1. All right, I'm okay. Let's just put a level 1 for now. Let's just see how it looks right there. Strahd likes it. He's a fan.
The only thing I didn't like about it was Castle Ravenloft's weird dungeon. I couldn't find the stairs. It was just
You mean the fact that it wasn't the typical top-down view and it was
Yeah.
the weird isometric?
yeah.
Yeah. Design is very different on the castle versus
Yeah.
anything else.
I like those maps, but you can't obviously play on them. But what I did like is Roll20's adaptation, which they literally made top-down versions of Ravenloft that you can play on, which is a huge plus. All right, Storm King's Thunder. This is the only one that I've done as a player, and seemed pretty damn big and very all-encompassing. This one's similar to Waterdeep Dragon Heist, has a weird thing where it's like hey, our marquee thing is the giants, and the whole concept behind this adventure was bringing together all those classic, against the hill giant setting and all those giant dungeons. But the way it's narratively structured is you only have to do one of them. You get
Yeah.
to choose which giant dungeon you do, and that should have been like the crux of the adventure was going to do. I thought going to do all these giant things, and instead it ends up being just you end up rolling around the entire Faerun area, probably a bigger geographical area than any of the other campaigns try to encompass. Granted, the Underdark is humongous also, but in terms of the surface
Practically
level,
almost combined. Yeah.
yeah, it's insanely big. So it just seems like a nightmare from a DM standpoint. And there's a whole bunch of just little, it ends up, I think you're just gathering artifacts from different areas, and then you just choose like one giant location and then do that one. And that's bizarre to me.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like Storm King's Thunder, like it was a point where like the great upheaval, it's the reckoning's coming, and now like all the storm giants, but now they're big, now their leader's gone. Hey, we can start killing the humans now. Like I love how they're trying to like make it like there was like a civil war within the clans.
Yeah.
But they didn't emphasize that. And when I played the book as a player and a DM, I made it as like basically there was like calamity, like villages were being burned down. Like it was a full scale war. Like giants were basically just killing each other and killing and stepping on whoever was in the way. And it's to the point where I was putting the characters of like, all right, cool. So like these are the battle lines and these were the regions. As they go to different towns, they hear like, or like, cool. Which of the different clans or like have which territory? Like the hill giants, they'll control most of this forest. And I'll just basically like all right, it's like 100 square miles like wide, and basically that's where I'll pin like the different dungeon. And most of the times, if like they don't want to get captured, like the hill giants, they're like, so like I made them like tactical, like basically like, all right, cool, we have to relocate our base and stuff. So basically they're on the move, and so like I made it like almost like a hunt, like you're hunting giants as an adventurer.
Yeah, it needs more giants in that campaign, like for sure. I don't think you get and even in the beginning, like you choose, correct me if I'm wrong, but you choose one of the like 3 towns to be attacked by one of the different giant factions, and that just becomes your starter town. And then it's a weird way of like injecting like replayability in a giant campaign that I didn't necessarily want. I'd rather just have one good campaign that included all of the different giant factions together, and that's like all you were working with was dealing, similar to how the dragon thing worked, where you went off and fought a bunch of the different chromatic dragons, for example.
The only ones that are playable, I would say, you can't play Brianshire. If you play the Brianshire introduction, you're basically setting your characters to die. Like you're setting them to fight 9 frost giants,
Yeah.
9
Well,
frost giants and 2 frost.
we
And
we
they're
we did that in
Oh,
our
go ahead.
campaign, and the way you did it is it basically turns into more of a like role-playing social encounter with a whole bunch of NPCs on your side, so you're not really meant to play that battle straight up. But one of the few things that Storm King's Thunder does well is have moments like that where early on, you know, entire cities are being besieged by an army of giants. You're like, holy shit, we're gonna get our asses kicked. We're like level 2. And then in the middle of the campaign, we're like all the entire party taking down one giant, which feels cool. And then by the end of the campaign, you're actually fighting like multiple giants, which feels really cool. So the scaling, I think, works pretty well. The sense of like, oh man, we really have come a long way since, you know, those level
Yeah.
1 or 2 days.
Chris had the Chris had did a great job. I looked at that book and said, nah.
Yeah. and you know, somebody else was saying about how much they had to homebrew. I think that was Sean. How much he homebrewed the campaign that he was running. Chris had to homebrew the shit out of Storm Kings and all the stuff. You know, building on our characters' backstories and about, you know, the Reese playing that Warforged character and his whole backstory with that, and Bryce's backstory as a Zentarum agent. Like all of that stuff was like the best stuff that we did. Was all the stuff that he was doing, and then the weakest stuff was the actual like main campaign stuff. So
Your character too.
Storm
I
Kings has a
I
good
think one of the
framework, maybe,
things
but
I think one of the things they struggle with is between this and Out of the Abyss and Princes of the Apocalypse. Geographically, it's just too big to manage as a
so
DM.
big. Yeah, I mean, you
And
might as
I
well just give
think
an open world of like the entire
you
part
get
of
the whole
Faerun.
world. It
Yeah.
is the Sword Coast, period. The whole thing.
Yeah.
Like the difference is like
More than the
Cursive
coast. Yeah.
Yeah. But like Cursive Strawed is as big of a world as I would probably get. Because even if you
Yeah.
think about the ones that are high level adventures, like Dungeon of the Mad Mage, each dungeon is huge. But in your own mind, it's not that hard to wrap your head around because
Yeah.
you're just diving deeper in the same spot.
Yeah.
You're not traveling for 30
You
days.
have to come up with multiple towns and encounters and all this. Yeah, NPCs.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
Yeah.
And
I
the
think it's
thing
too
is,
much.
I think what really happened here is it got released roughly the same time as Volo's Guide to Monsters. And Volo's Guide to Monsters has all these great new giant types, much better than the Monster Manual because the Monster Manual is bland. Like in 5e, I haven't played 3.5, I haven't played 4th edition, but I've gone back to look at the stat blocks. So as a DM, I can pull some of the stuff that was better because the dragons back there were better. And I don't know if it's the same with the giants, but the giants just feel weak out of the monster manual. And so I think when they said, we're going to do Volos and upgrade the giants, they're like going, well, let's do a giant book at the same time. And so they made this one because they got released the same year.
Yeah.
But again, it runs into the same problems of how do I manage something when I'm dealing with a continent and not a region?
I think
I'm not worried about towns. I'm worried about city states. It's huge.
I would rank Storm Kings below Princes. Does anybody have a disagreement about that? Putting it below wherever Princes ends up?
I'd move Princes up to either 8 or 7 and then put Storm Kings above Out of the Abyss.
Put it above Out of the Abyss. That was the other question I gotta have. Yeah. Does anybody have any strong feelings about ranking Storm Kings versus Out of the Abyss?
I think that's appropriate. I'd say that likewise. We're looking at this as an overshot, you know, not personal wise, but like seeing like how Storm King's Thunder was just heavily homebrewed, and we're just seeing like how is the book without the Bayer necessity.
Yeah, I mean, there's still a lot of Out of the Abyss that I like.
A lot
It's
of empty space. And
yeah, this is a tough one for me, honestly, between Out of the Abyss and Storm Kings.
We can come back to it
Yeah.
once we actually get down to the final.
starts getting
when we
real
look at the
tricky.
when we look at the actual final list.
Yeah, we've
once
already
we
been
get
going an
to-
hour, so we need to start speeding this up. Although I
Yeah,
do love
next.
this discussion that we've been having. All right, Tales of the Yawning Portal is the first time that we've had a not original campaign story. Instead, we had a collection of older classic dungeons from previous editions updated to 5th edition. I think there were 5 or 6 of them, and then there was some connective tissue between them, but I think it was more of like, here's the like tier 1 dungeon, here's the level 5 and 6 dungeon, here's the 7 and 8 dungeon. They were just kind of organized that way.
It's a good idea, but it's just like standoffs. They're like one-offs, and
Yeah.
I like for me personally, I put this at 15.
Oh, really?
Fill your campaign with.
Yeah.
Every once in a while.
It's like a band-aid for your campaign.
Yeah.
Because they're not meant to be actually ran run as a campaign. You're basically meant to like just
Right.
pull these dungeons out. How well?
You're running them as modules. It's not an
Yeah.
adventure book. It's a module. Because an
That's true.
adventure is a whole campaign. This one and Ghosts of Saltmarsh are the ones where, like, the way that I use it is literally because it's Tales of the Yawning Portal. The Yawning Portal is based in Waterdeep. If my players get bored of their current character and they want to dive into a different character class, a different race, whatever, I'll just tell them, head of the Yawning Portal, talk to Durnan. And when they talk to Durnan, I'll let them play a random new character, and they'll play out the story as their character that's listening to it being told by Durnan.
Huh.
So I use it as, like you almost said, like a Band-Aid, but I use it as a variety option when I'm doing any of the Waterdeep ones. Because thematically, it just fits. You're just having that picture that you're seeing right there, Durnan leaning over the bar, basically saying, well, let me tell you the time of, and then it turns into almost like what's that movie that's cult classic with the Dread Pirate Roberts?
Princess Bride.
Yeah, it's like a Princess Bride. They're basically playing out the stories that Durnan is sharing.
How well do those modules hold up? Because looking at the maps of, like, there was the one that was the hidden shrine of Tama Chowen or something.
Bad.
Yeah,
So-
a lot of those map designs, I mean, they were very old school. It was very much blocky rooms with long hallways, and it's just, it feels very archaic and not in a very pleasing way compared to like modern map design.
Yeah. This was
Part
also
of
the
that-
time. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, part of the map was, sandwiched in between the, the binding, and you're like, what? Okay. I saw a string where the guy actually was like, what the? Okay, I'll just make my own map. He was
Yeah.
explaining it like you do. Sorry.
This was like at a time where like there was like a hiatus point where like it wasn't like because it was between like Storm King's Thunder Annihilation, but this was also like when I'm my experience like they were hugely marketing that like advertising like Adventure League. And this was a good book for Adventure League, and so like when they like get out like new DMs, they're like, oh yeah, if you're a new DM, like the experienced DM would toss you the book and say run one of these adventures, and there you go. Those were perfect for Adventure League. I never enjoyed Adventure League personally because they're just so plain and plaid for me.
Yeah.
For my players, they really like it, and the reason why is because a lot of these adventures that we're talking about, you're playing for months straight, and sometimes with professionals and adults, you don't have the time or the commitment level to be able to do that. Not everybody can. And so if you can just sit down and say, hey, we're just going to do a story for a couple months and then we'll take a break for a couple months. It's easier to do that with these modules. And
Yeah.
the fact that if you're going, you know what, let's not start at level 1 again to do this new adventure. Let's start at level 10. Let's start at level 8. Let's start at, and have that variety to it. Or even you're done with one adventure and you're going to the next module in the book, that they could literally just scrap the previous character and go, you know what, I really wasn't into wizards. This time, I still want to do magic, but I'm going to do a bard. Like, it gives them the variety where they can really just get a feeling of what they actually enjoy.
How good are those dungeons though? Because you could, for example,
Sunlit
take a dungeon
Citadel
from
is
Princes.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Sunlit Citadel was fantastic.
That was
They
a
had one
3rd
of the best
edition one, I think.
kobolds.
Yeah. It was.
It's the very first one in this book.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then they also have the Tomb of Horrors, the very
Yeah,
like
the original.
the original. So you have to like prep people and say, "This is a I'm going to kill you
Yeah,
dungeon."
this was built as a fuck you dungeon, literally.
Well, it's more of built as a puzzle dungeon. Like people have to think of it of the game differently, where it's not you're going to have this huge backstory of this character. You're just running
Yeah.
a character through here to see if you can figure out the puzzles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Tomb of Horrors was also like I think it was like what, second edition, first edition? Correct me if I'm
Something
wrong.
like that. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's
so
good
this
trivia.
those were like times where basically Dungeons and Dragons used to be a competitive game. Basically, people in conventions would have like 100 character sheet, and basically just see whoever lives through dungeon will get to win a prize.
Harry
That's
Gygax made it so he would one up his players because he was tired of overpowered characters. It was
Yeah,
part of
it's
his
infamous.
time.
But to be fair, like the actual dungeons themselves are a lot of fun. Like I just
Okay.
was a player in the Tomoe-chan one that you were talking about, and Tiny was running it, and it was a ton of fun. It was an absolute blast.
Miss
He
Tiny.
homebrewed
Shout
a
outs to
little bit,
Tiny. Usually our DM roundtables.
and like he ran it, and Sube was in there with me. He was a player. I was a player. It was a blast.
Nice.
So like these ones, they still hold up. You just have to know what you're getting yourself into. Like it might not be something where a brand new player who's heard all about how fifth edition is this super welcome, super inviting, build your character, you're gonna fall in love with your character, it's gonna live forever and never die. No, this is Dungeons and Dragons classic version, where it's modules.
Are those
And
modules good enough to rate it above either of the Tyranny of Dragons books? Because it seems like everybody's pretty low on Tales of the Yawning Portal.
because of how I incorporate it with the Waterdeep ones, I usually put it at 6 or 7.
Oh wow.
Because I can incorporate all 3 of those books together and be able to weave them in there and give the variety.
Yeah.
My players absolutely adore it.
To me, the dungeons have to go above and beyond because this is not a campaign book. It does not have a story. It does not really have an adventure. You can't just run it as is. Well, I mean, you could homebrew the shit out of it, I guess, and try and come up with a reason. There's a bunch of MacGuffins. There's a piece of the rod in every single dungeon or something. I mean, you could do something like that, but it completely fails as a story. So it
The
would have
RP
to.
is low.
Yeah. So you'd have to Yeah. So you'd have to really have those dungeons be that much better. So for me, that would have to be bottom half. Even though, yeah, I could pick and choose some of these dungeons and run them as modules. The question is just where exactly does that fit?
how
would-
memorable.
Yeah.
I would say it's lower than Ghosts of Saltmarsh for similar reasons. So if you were to drop it low, I think maybe 12, 11.
Yeah, let's stick it there for now. Were you okay with putting it above Tyranny of Dragons, or do we really want to put it below? I guess is the question. If anybody has strong feelings.
I'll put it above.
It's certainly above Hoard.
Okay. Or it might end up dropping to our 15. That could definitely
I
happen.
think I did. The only one I didn't like was the Thay one.
Okay.
It's just too big.
How many of them are there in the book?
5,
Okay.
Yeah.
I think.
Let's put it at 12 for now. Tomb of Annihilation.
Number 2.
I know a little bit about that.
Before I saw you run it,
I'd put it number 1.
I would have never ran it.
Interesting. Corey, welcome to the discussion. You are the super lurker. Number 1.
Yeah, sorry. I feel old. I played all those modules in 2nd edition and 1st edition. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah, you guys talking about them like they're not very well run. It's just
I love it, dude.
No,
Dragons.
I ran them too.
Everybody's immediately like apologetic.
No. I'm not
Yeah.
apologetic. I just wish you had spoken up when I was trying to get it up at 6 or 7 or higher.
Well, I was gonna suggest putting in at 6 or 7, but as a campaign, it's lousy. But the modules themselves,
They stand
yeah,
up.
I have a soft spot in my heart for just about all of them. Maybe not Dead and Thay. I agree with that one. It's pretty all over the place, but
Right.
yeah,
I could see it jumping up a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, Tomb,
So far, I'm
however.
agreeing with everything here. Yeah, number one for me.
I'm running 2 campaigns right now.
Holy crap.
Yeah,
The
that's
beginning was
that's
the thing I couldn't stand. The teleportation thing.
Yep.
At the beginning, or
Like
which
the
part?
It Wizards has some very bad introductions to a lot of these campaigns.
it's because they're having a 30,000-foot overview. They're like, holy crap, this is like it's like starting a book, like writing a book. Like once you get the first part, like it could be bad, but if the middle ending is good, that's what they thought. They're like, hey, the beginning sucks. Yeah, whatever. Hey, it's what's between the beginning and end.
And I get that it can be hard with different characters and you want to use their stories and all that, but I mean, just you've got this exotic location and you're just going to teleport people there? Like,
Just start them on the island. Like, screw the
Yeah.
actual riding of the teleport. Just have
start
them
it on
be there.
how cool would like a shipwreck be? Like you're all on a ship, like just come up with some reason the players are all on a ship together. That can be your proverbial.
And that's what I did.
We met in a tavern, like we're all on this ship together. Nice. And we just shipwrecked on Schult, and then you're somewhere else. You got to get to town. Like all those introductions would be so much cooler.
So you gave me inspiration, and I with like how the dragon swooped over, and sorry spoilers for whoever has caught up to the show, but like when the dragon
Spoilers for
swooped
my
over and
campaign specifically.
yeah, when the dragon swooped over and burned down the ship, that's what I did. They were
Oh,
traveling
that's
on
cool.
a merchant. So basically, at level 1, they're now doing a survival game. They have basically the rations, stuff like that. They they don't have a ranger, which I didn't tell them to get a ranger. Good berry. So now they're like scrounging for food, making spear weapons. Like it's a really good intro, like to say like you're trapped in a jungle, because like my best venture all times is Isles of the Dread. I love that book.
Yeah.
And Super Lurker, I know you have played that before.
Oh, I have the 5th edition version from Goodman Games.
Me too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I like that.
Isles of the Dread is such a classic book because it's like Chult, but it's just more deadlier, I could say.
I've
You could
actually
have,
looked at
like,
that one.
extra
Yeah.
Schult as an island.
Yes.
Was that the original Hex Crawl?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
original
the old
basic
daddy.
set was a expert set. It was
Like
a
what
Keeper of
if
Warland.
instead of dungeons, we just bummed around an island like the old like stop motion animation Sinbad movies and just did cool encounters on that, and it worked pretty well. And I think Tomb is the Hex Crawl. I could do it well. I should do a whole video on like the do's and don'ts of running Tomb of Annihilation. The Hex Crawl is done very well. There's a lot of really cool encounters there. It's, I think, the right size, but I still kind of condensed things together. All of those points of interest are interesting locations. And unfortunately, it's one of the last 5e adventures with really gorgeous maps, which is a big factor for me personally. I really like to have nice looking maps of my adventures. And this is a good example. We complained that the demons and the Underdark didn't quite mesh together, but meshing Tomb of Horrors with Isle of Dread and actually works really, really well. Like you basically create this creepy mega dungeon in the middle of this forgotten city in the middle of this, very untamed dinosaur jungle crawling with dinosaurs. It's just got a lot of really cool Indiana Jones ass flavor to it. That's a really, really fun adventure. There's pirates bumming around. There's a whole pirate faction. Port Nyanzaru is probably one of the best, if not the best, realized town in terms of the map quality, the encounters you can have, the things going on. There's dinosaur races. There's like zombies attacking the gates. There's a dragon turtle out in the bay guarding against other ships. There's just so much cool shit happening in that starter town alone. Tomb of Annihilation has been absolutely incredible for me to run. It's meshed really well. I think it's went with the group that I'm running. It's gone very, very well. I have probably nothing but high praise, but a lot of that is because we play specifically on a virtual tabletop, and the Roll20 adaptation is so well done because of the maps and the quality and everything else. So that is definitely a big factor for me.
So let me ask a question. Obviously, everybody here sounds like it's pretty much one or two. Would you change your ranking numbers where my blue box is right now and change that to number 1 and just have 2 number 1s and just have them be tied?
No time. We got to definitively rank. So here's the question. If everybody's very positive on Tomb, is it better than Strawed?
I think Tomb has one major flaw in the ticking clock aspect of the woman dying who you've got to save.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think it's really, you've got this beautifully realised island with all these great encounters and these great places you can go and visit. But as soon as you do that, you've lost the campaign if you play it as written. We went and did the Tinder dragon in the mine. By the time we'd got there and finished it and then got back to what we were doing, she was dead.
I eliminated all that bullshit. But that's a good point. That is written as designed.
But it's as the book is written, that is something that you should do. And I'd say that's the only downside really to the book.
Well, it's like in the book it says like the necromantic curse. It's stopping from people being revived from the death. I took in the interpretation of basically if you destroy the artifact, that means you can revive people from the dead. So that, or resurrection. That's what I took it. So even if she dies, you can still raise her back in the dead and still pay her, and she'll still pay you.
Because that's what's important. Is getting my money. Where my money at?
Yeah, where's my free magical item? I want my magical item.
But her soul got eaten.
Yeah.
Soulmonger.
That's if they eaten him. It says it progressively eats it, because the creation is not finished until all the souls in the plane is eaten.
I just said that to see you respond. I apologize.
It's all good. Like I've read this book back and forth and see like different ways, because like one of these campaigns for intro, I put him as as Serac. I put him as basically he's haunting these my adventurers right now. And because they like,
I
this
think
is the
there's
only
a lot of homebrewing that lots of people do with it. As
Yeah.
written, it's definitely 1 or 2. Whether it's better than Strahd or not, I think it definitely depends on your group and you as a DM.
As a big bad, and this is my unbiased, I say Cursive Strawed should be, because he's a definitive big bad dude. Like, you don't know which one is the big bad dude in Annihilation. You're just finding an item.
A Serac should be as big of a bad as much as I know about my Forgotten Realms lore, which is not a lot. But a Serac does not actually factor into this campaign at all. It's the very awful, it's almost like the JRPG final form villain at the end, which is like, suckers, it's a Serac. But he's on the goddamn cover of the book.
Exactly.
You know he's involved. And instead it's like, you got to use the Stone Sisters, you got to use pirates, you got to use all these other things.
I'm going to sound old here again, but Asarak's not from Forgotten Realms. He's from Greyhawk.
I said that.
Oh, true. I'm getting schooled now.
Mic drop.
Sorry, guys.
That's a good point. Interdimensional Lich. All right. What about number 2? Are we cool with Tomb at 2?
Yes.
Tomb
Yeah.
at 2.
Yeah.
All right. We're coming down the home stretch, which is good. This is going to be an extra long episode of the DM Roundtable. Appreciate all of you sticking around. We're getting into the Waterdeep ones now. Waterdeep Dragon Heist.
I put that at 3 or 4.
Oh, fascinating.
Yep, 3 or 4. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why.
I did not like this one at all when I read it.
Because most of you, I can hear it as soon as I said that. Everybody was like going, "What the fuck is he talking about? He's not educated." As written, it's 7, it's 11, it's whatever. But out of my own personal experience, everything you just said about Portnoy and Zaro is echoed, if not improved, in Waterdeep, especially if, as a DM, you've done your homework by reading the Gazetteer at the end. And for me, like you, I looked at it and said, why the crap am I picking a season? This is complete bullshit. So what I ended up doing is I sat there and I said, let's look at all these bad guys. They all have different motivations to go after the gold. Would they be competing against each other if they were doing it simultaneously? Because I'm not going to run this with the same group 4 times. No one's going to fucking do that.
No.
But if you look at it and you go, I have all of these great layers and I want them to explore it. If you have these bad guys that are trying to recruit the players to help them get the gold to beat a different bad guy, because they can't ever take them on 1v1. If they do, they will get absolutely annihilated. Anyone take on the Breaking Dareth, you're fucking dead. The Drow are just going to absolutely murder you.
The
It's
problem
not
is
even a question.
you don't actually fight. So
My players do. My
Okay.
players do.
But
my players,
as
my
written in
players
the
went in and like in Xanathar's lair,
yeah,
there's all this stuff about gunpowder barrels. They blew the fucking thing up.
like the
But you
final
can't kill
climax,
Xanathar.
you don't even fight. You don't even go to that layer is designed. But from what I remember, you don't even go there normally as part of the story. The climax is you show up at the vault at the
Correct.
end, and it's not even a goddamn heist.
But then what happens is at the end of the vault, they basically get pressured into giving it to somebody else, and then you have to go to that guy's lair. So you can go to some of the lairs. It's all depending on what your party does and how you react. It's not storyline like the starter set. It's not railroaded. There's not a definitive thing. It's here's your 3 or 4 different options. How would you work these together? So yes, there's a lot of homebrew that goes into it that makes it 3 or 4 in my book. But it's honestly with my players, they put a fucking hot tub in the middle of their Troll Skull Manor, and we had to figure out how would you build a hot tub, and we did it. And like there was all this stuff that my players just took it and ran with it, and it was amazing. By far the best experience I've had with D&D.
Wow.
That sounds like it was good because of what you guys did outside of the actual story, though.
Correct. So actual story, like I said, it would be like 11, 6 or 7. But for my personal experience, 3 or 4.
Yeah.
For me, yeah, again, the book is amazing. But like, this is for the point where I was looking at like the maps, book itself, and just looking at how it is run. It's a good idea. I love like where the intrigue, different like like role playing aspects. It's a good book for like to talk to like different types of people and personality and enemies and stuff. But what caught me off guard, and like I'm a huge guy for like color maps. Like I'm like, oh wow, these are pretty, and but I'm like, oh man, these are not. They don't have any color.
Sure don't. Sure don't.
Yeah. That's just my opinion. It's just but again, I have played with like first edition, second edition, where like you basically have like pencil scratch maps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna chime in. Blue and white was the color scheme for years for the maps that we had to look at.
Yeah.
So ranking wise, where would you drop it?
For me, just from what I've read and the way the seasons are set up and the way it only goes to like level 5, like it would be. I would probably put it right there at 11 if I was having to do this with just my input. But if enough of you want to raise it up, then I could be convinced to put it higher than that.
I would say 7 because as much as it gives you different seasons and it gives you like that, yeah, you're at the end of the day you're getting a heist, but
better than Prince's.
It's because it's like I'm looking at a homebrew aspect because like the thing is like there's more things you can actually play around with. You have a whole city. This whole city has so much history with. Prince of Apocalypse doesn't have a city. It basically gives you like mega dungeons, which is good, which I like it. Storm King's Thunder gives you big of an overview, and Out of Abyss just drops you off at the middle of a book. It's basically the author just missed like basically, all right, yep, the character dies, and we're gonna continue to the next chapter. And I get Sherling, and I get what you're seeing, and I kind of see where you're going at.
So this is kind of where this is going to get interesting on the stack ranking, because honestly, for me, seeing everything that's coming after with Dragon Heist and everything that's coming up the pipe, I would take everything as is 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, and just slide them all to the right.
That's probably gonna to the right.
Yes, so Hoard of the Dragon Queen, 15. Rise of Tiamat, 14. Tales of Yawning Portal, 13. Out of the Abyss,
I could see that
12.
happening. Yeah. All right,
let's slide them all.
Let's. Well, I'm probably gonna go that direction. I'm gonna go ahead and put Dragon Heist at 7 for now. So, but we can certainly move things around after. Mad Mage, Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which was a very weird sequel. And I'm calling it a sequel because they said Waterdeep : Dragon Heist, and it went from 1 to 5. And then
Same art style, either way.
Yeah. And then Waterdeep: Dungeon of the Mad Mage, which goes from like 5 to 20, which is the very first and still only officially published D&D material that I believe goes up to tier 4. And it, from what I read about it, it couldn't be further away from Waterdeep Dragon Heist. Waterdeep Dragon Heist is this, modular city where you can do stuff in. And Dungeon of the Mad Mage is just nothing but dungeon crawls. It is, here's level 1, level 2, level 3, here's Skullport, and then there's levels like 5 through 20. And they're cool.
23.
Yeah, there's
There's a lot.
There's giant dungeons, and seems like there's some good stuff in there. But story-wise, it seems very, very weird.
Meh.
Especially coming
This is
from...
the only one I've actually played through
Okay.
as a group, and we made it fairly deep. I would say maybe the 16th floor, but we never knew what floor we were on.
Wow.
Because you go through a gate and you're somewhere you have no idea where you are. You have no support. We wiped on a level, and that was it. We just called her quits. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a Spelljammer ship with gray slaads and mind flayers, and that's where we wiped as a party.
Wow. That's a cool level.
Like I'm hearing like a lot of people from Dungeon Mage, like they kind of compare it to like what was that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm kind of like like a 2000s kid, but also like thinking of like first edition. Like what was that book that that you're basically like you had a group of adventurers. The king says you go investigate this like this broken ship, and it was basically the dungeon was an alien ship.
That is
Barrier
expedition to the
Expedition.
Barrier Peaks,
Yeah,
and it was
That's the
Okay.
one. That's how I saw this book as, and I was like, all right, this is basically the expedition of Barriers Peak,
Just
and
got
I was
progressively
like,
crazier.
exactly.
That's
It's
it.
basically it was just, but
for that.
Barrier Peaks had like a linear, like basically the more you go in the ship, the more you get like see your different section. This is where they keep the plants, where they keep like animals. But this one, it's just it wasn't. I don't know.
All over
Like
the place.
yeah, all over the place.
Like, here's the druid level. Here's the level with the miniature castle. Here's the swamp level. Here's the one with the asteroid. Like,
Exactly.
it
Honestly, the reason I bought this one was so that I could pull the dungeons
Yeah.
out
I
and
was gonna
use
say,
them as
That's the
modules.
best
like
Rules
Tales from the
in
Yawning
Homebrew.
Portal.
Yeah, that's exactly what this is.
I got
Except
the
for it's
map
all.
pack.
Yeah, exactly. You get the map pack and you only need the book, but
Yeah.
you get the map pack so you have the encounters there if you wanted to thematically combine them with things.
Which is kind of a failure of a campaign, I feel like. But
Yeah.
I mean, the dungeons can be good, but it just doesn't tell a very good story. Although I think there's some fun stuff going on in Skullport, maybe. But like, it's such
And
a weird one to come off of Dragon Heist too, and make that be part of the same thing.
and spoilers, but at the very bottom, at the very deepest level, there's basically kind of how you were talking about the gates earlier, Super Lurker. It's kind of the same thing here, that at the very bottom level, the gates basically can bring you to any of the locations of any of the previous adventure books. Like you're sitting there going, I could go to where Storm King's Thunder is going to start. I could go to where Princes of the Apocalypse is going to start.
How can you
I could
start
go
one of those
to-
at that deep of a? Because you got to be
It
high
doesn't
level.
make sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. And
You're
so it's kind of
20
more of just like a throwback or like a, hey, maybe you should buy this book because you don't know what that means.
It's weird.
Like I think it's more marketing at that point because it didn't like logically, like you said, if I'm level 20, there's no way I'm going to go do a level 3 through 12 mission.
Let's compare it directly to Tales from the Yawning Portal. Is it going to be better or worse than that? It's got more dungeons.
Better in an aspect. It's I enjoy the chaotic of it. Like it's nice. If some aspect, if you're like a masochist of like basically like go through like a long dungeon.
I mean, I think it definitely can be used as, especially because there are folks out there who are making like good looking maps of those dungeons, because they're not badly designed dungeons in of themselves. They don't really connect to the other levels very well. But if you're just going to run like, I want to run the Drow dungeon because I've got a Drow thing coming up, then you can pull that dungeon and use it. The actual maps in the book aren't good, but there are maps out there that you could use. Or obviously, if you're not somebody that uses maps, then you're good to go there. But just based on content alone, I'm tempted. I don't have the nostalgia for the Yawning Portal ones. So based on that, I would rank the Mad Mage one. I mean, we've got that 12 slot right there. We could put it between Out of the Abyss and Tales from the Yawning Portal. Unless we think it's better than Out of the Abyss or Storm Kings.
No, I wouldn't say so as a player.
Yeah.
I have read since we played in the campaign that once again, DM's Guild has got some great ideas for how to make it better, turning it into a game show where the wizard toys with the party on the way down.
That's good.
I know our DM didn't do any of that stuff, but yeah,
there's actually one of the levels, I think, is a beholder that runs his level like a game show, doesn't he?
It's the school for the people that were the apprentices for Halistar.
Okay.
And so you're going through this level, and there's
That one
all
looks
these
fun.
traps and different things, but the whole time you're going through, Halistar is basically trying to see if he wants to recruit one of you as a future apprentice. Meanwhile, you're running into his other apprentices or things along the way, but it's kind of like a game show. Very similar to what you did in this most recent level of Tomb of Annihilation with Withers. So, yeah, it's interesting.
All right, Ghosts of Saltmarsh is like Tales from the Yawning Portal. It was a bunch of classic, older. I mean, actually, a lot of these were more recent, I think, too. Dungeons updated to 5th edition. This time, however, we got an actual theme, which was water-based adventures, and there is a better attempt at a story here. At least 3 of the adventures are actually a part of a trilogy, the Saltmarsh trilogy, I guess. So, and then they just kind of inserted a bunch of other water-themed dungeons here. So for that reason, I'm tempted to put it above Tales, but it's still probably on the lower half because, again, it's that same kind of...
It's how we're looking at it. Are we looking at this as basically a module or like basic like segments of like or like not the tombs but the adventures, or as the adventure as a book? Because like as a book wise, it gives you so much. Basically, gives you like ship combat that you can always tweak. And again, I don't use the ship combat. Like the ship combat that is there, we always ask for it. Like for such a long time, we only had homebrew stuff.
Yeah,
but
that's true.
Again, Again, it still doesn't work. Even to this day, I still use some of the DM's Guild stuff for ship combat. Like I want, like in my world, I use cannons because why can't we have cannonballs in normal? Like why? Like there's gunpowder in Waterdeep. There's gunpowder in the world.
Yeah.
Isn't Saltmarsh based out of one of the other worlds? Isn't it like Greyhawk or whatever? But you can adapt it to Faerun?
It's actually Faerun.
No, it's Greyhawk.
No, it's not. It's not Faerun.
Yeah.
I actually saw it in the map though. I funny enough, I did see it on the map.
I placed it somewhere near there. Yeah.
There's people have put it in there, which I like because if I were to run it, I would put it in the Sword Coast.
Just for consistency, yeah.
Wow,
it's straight up in Greyhawk, yeah.
Yeah,
Which is
it's
weird.
not.
Yeah, they didn't change that, which is bizarre because they've changed everything else to be in the Sword Coast specifically.
Right. For me, I love the very first one because the very first mission out of all the compendium of modules seems like your traditional Scooby-Doo mystery.
Yeah, it's hard to make a good level 1 dungeon, and that one is really fun. And it does have a little story there with the whole like lizard folk and fighting against the Sahuagin and all that. Yeah.
And those three kind of pair together. And,
yeah, they give you a ship right off the bat, which is fun. I think Saltmarsh is kind of a neat town. It's not. I don't think it's quite as good as like a Phandelver or something, but they try to do something with like different factions. They try to introduce. There's different holds over Saltmarsh and all that.
And they have like the Undead Lighthouse, and they have the ones with the Aboleths. So like overall, thematically, I think it's pretty good.
The one that's like a straight up Cthulhu one was pretty good too. At the I think it's the last one.
I love the fact that they had so many thematic backgrounds. But that's not talking about the adventures. That's just talking about the book as a book.
It's a cool source book, but as a campaign
an adventure,
book, it's not.
It's not. Yeah, exactly.
I still think it's better than Tales from the Yawning Portal, just because it's got some of that extra stuff in there and does at least attempt to put some of the stuff in
I'd put it at 11 and bump the rest of it up to
Yeah.
Mad
7.
Mage?
Same.
Okay, that sounds
Yeah.
good. I like that as well.
Me too.
Bumpity bumpity bump. All right. Acquisitions Incorporated.
No.
Who knows anything about Ack Inc?
was
have
was
no
that a
clue what
deep
it is.
I
sigh?
don't know anything about this.
I don't take it seriously.
Yeah.
Nice joke. And I know nothing on Jerry, whatever his name is. I can't. No, that plays in that. I just don't take that campaign serious.
Too
It's
jokey.
a parody.
Yeah.
It started as a parody. It is a parody, and that's cool. It's part of history now. But
Certainly the history of 4th and 5th edition.
I
Go ahead, Jordan.
I've never watched Ack Inc., so coming at it completely blind and just looking at it for what it is, with a lot of my new players that don't know how to work together as a party, having those roles really helps them understand how to work together as a team. And that's, again, sourcebook. Adventure wise, it's a little bit all over the place, but it's still a reasonably good starting off adventure. If I was to compare it to Dragon Heist, starter set, and Essentials Kit, I'd probably put it. It's hard to figure out which one I would rank higher out of those ones. Vandelver would definitely be the starter set would definitely be one like tied with Dragon Heist, but Essentials Kit and this one are pretty close together too.
True. If I may say, for a counter argument, it's just that seeing Acquisition Corporation, like, it's a good point where like it builds cooperation, but I don't want my player, like personally, I don't want my players to think that Dungeons and Dragons is a joke. Like sometimes, like it gets serious points where there's some serious points where like the big bad dude's coming up, and you have to do this. Your friend's dying. What are you gonna do? But like when they actually played it out, it's just I just looked at it and I'm just like, that's cute.
This is interesting. This is where I'm going to be the dissenting voice amongst all of you. I'm extremely high on Acquisitions Incorporated. I'm a big fan of
cool.
those guys and that show, and I've watched them live at like PAX conventions, and
I enjoy it.
yeah, but I also really love the adventure, and I'm okay with it being really jokey. Maybe that's just my group, and we tend to be a lot more of a beer and pretzel style D&D group. We're just kind of having fun and cracking jokes at each other.
Yeah, everyone has different groups.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the Ack Inc. one definitely would work very well for ours. I just looked up my review because I reviewed the Roll20 adaptation, and I literally called it like, I'm gonna fucking quote myself. What a jackass thing to do. But I said that it dethrones Fandelver as my favorite and the best low-level 5th edition campaign. I really enjoyed the actual adventure in here as well. And they had full-color maps, which I forgot about that. This one actually has full-color, really nice maps, and you know how much I love that shit. So I'm really high on this one. Even though it's not a full campaign, I don't quite... I think it goes longer than Fandelver, but I'm not actually sure. I want to say it goes up to like 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I
It
have
does.
I have ran this. Again, I have ran this, so like that's why if I didn't have nothing good to say about it, I wouldn't say nothing.
Yeah.
But I would say
I
the
don't.
adventure's really good. The adventure's really good. Like, and I will put this above Dragon Heist and even the starter set.
Yeah. I definitely would, but that's I think I'm gonna have to fight some of you for it.
To fight some of you.
I do like the franchise stuff too. All
Well,
the company positions. I do think that's pretty well.
So I don't have really much of an opinion on it.
Yeah.
So I'll take myself out of it.
Yeah, like I have my in and ups. Like everyone has different groups. Some people are like goofy and stuff like that. Other people like serious role playing, like like
Yeah.
that, that like bravado of like dark and grimy stuff. It depends on what your group. And seeing from like Acquisition Incorporation, this is a good book if like you're trying to get like your niece or your nephew to get like into Dungeons and Dragons, or maybe your kids, or like it's a good book. general.
I think it's got good characters. I think it's got solid story structure. Like it honestly has things that it doesn't have a lot of those glaring flaws that a lot of these other adventures have. Now, partly it's because it's only half as long as some of them, but I think it's still very well constructed. Even if it is, I mean, at one point you go to like a casino run by a lich, and that's just fucking great. Like there's so much just silly stuff, but that just the role playing opportunities and the fun there is a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
So
And
it sounds like you rank things a lot based off of RP.
I do.
I mean, if it's a fun,
Interesting.
if there's fun potential
Okay.
there, then yeah,
Yeah.
you
Okay.
could have a lot of fun stuff there.
So would you put it at 6, 3, 4? Would you move something around? Put it lower, higher? Where would you?
I mean,
where would
if
you
this were
wanna place it?
if this were my personal list, it would be a top 5 easy. But it seems like if I'm going to compromise, then I could put it.
6,
yeah,
7?
right now I could put it maybe below Phandelver, but above Dragon Heist. But I mean, if you all have a big problem with that, then we could even talk about putting it lower than that. But that's where I could tentatively put it. I adore this book.
I'm good with 6.
Okay.
6 is all right. Yeah.
Me too.
Oops, I had Saltmarsh selected.
Yeah, Saltmarsh.
I don't think the other two are 3 and 4, so we're probably gonna have to shove things around a bit, but we'll see. All right, we finally got. God, we are almost 2 hours now, folks. The Dnd Essentials Kit. I'm gonna need y'all to talk a lot because I haven't even cracked this one open at all. I know nothing about this adventure.
I've not run it.
Same, I'm afraid.
Oh crap!
I ran it.
Okay.
I took the torch and I ran through it. And so running with a new group of players against compared to this is my first starter set. Like I haven't played the actual starter set. I was like, all right, I haven't played the original set. I might as well take the essential. It's a really good book. It's it's a really good module, but not in the Roll20 aspect. If you actually plan it like in an actual table environment, it has so much it has basically maps for you. It has basically like cards or like different magical items. It's
that's
good
true. The
box.
physical, yeah, and it comes with the actual DM screen, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, the starter kit did not do that.
But talking in a Roll20 aspect, because this is where most of our the context it is that it's a good book. It's like you can even run with people. But I don't recommend running to people because that defeats the purpose of like role playing and Dungeons and Dragons. Like it's the interaction of different players, the tug and war of moralities and stuff. Like, oh, we should do this. No, we should go that. We need to help this person. It's that point. The essential kit goes all the way up to level 8, even 10
Okay.
if you do everything. Like because at the end you're fighting the white dragon.
There's additional content on D&D Beyond.
Indeed.
Okay, I didn't realize it went
So-
that much higher.
So for me, when I've run this, because I've run this as well, but obviously I'm Mr. Homebrew with the way that I dealt with Dragon Heist. For me, I had new players, and they were like, "Yeah, let's do the Phandelver one," and I said, "Which one?" And they go, "I don't know, both." And so I said, "Fuck it, okay, I'll combine them."
Oh, is the other
So
one
you
Phandelver
have-
also?
Yeah, these
Yeah.
are both Phandelver.
Oh,
So the
come on,
thing
wizards.
is, so the thing is the starter set is very much here's the story, go down the story. There's a linear path. Essentials Kit is literally open world video game style of there's quests on a quest board, pick them off, but as you're doing so, there's a story running around in the back, and eventually you're going to want to get to it. So for me, it was very easy to combine the two because then you had again a linear story if you wanted to go this way with these quests surrounding the same area. So for me, both of them were very good in their own right. And to kind of dissent a little bit, I've run games where my players love working together as a group, but they like it even more when I schedule time out of game to do one-on-one D&D. And the way that I run that is by doing partial fail, where if you were trying to do something, you definitely have to change what combat looks like. You can't have them fighting one player against a group of orcs. So it's a lot more stealth type situations, or you run into a single guard and you guys do combat or whatever. But it's the ability to have the hirelings and have that rule set in there and incorporating that into just a really good story. The story is kind of centered around, yes, there's this white dragon and it's causing havoc in the Phandelver region, but there's also this cult of orcs that are doing something else. And so there's kind of like a couple of different things that you can engage with while people in the region need to be aware there's a white dragon. Let's get them all together. So a lot of the quests are, how do we consolidate people? How do we reach out to these different areas? And when you go to those different areas, you explore them. So it's kind of connected, but it's way more open world, freedom of choice than the starter set ever was. And if that's not your alley and you prefer a more logical storyline path, it probably isn't the one for you. So if you're more interested in campaign as a campaign, there's a logical storyline, then I would probably say you would want to put this at like 7 and maybe move 4, 5, 5, 6, and 7 up to 4, 5, and 6
Yeah,
and put it before Prince's. But for me, I thought it was pretty good.
that's
It has
But
fascinating.
all those tchotchkes in it too.
right, it's like there's just a lot of really good areas. So that like right now when I'm running the Ack Inc. storyline and people revisit Phandelver, I basically let them sit there and go, you can be in Phandelver as much as you want. There's no rush to move on to the next area. If you want, I'm going to throw in all the quests because, like Roll20, where you can intermingle multiple campaigns if you own them, Fantasy Grounds, where I run as a DM, does that even better. So I literally can just drop in the stories, the quests, whatever, and it feels like it's one book. So it's very, very, very easy for me to combine campaigns simultaneously.
My only disappointment just from hearing it is I'm bummed that they just reused Phandelver again. Like it seems like they kind of already wrote the book literally on
Right,
the
right.
Phandelver
But this
area.
one, they're doing
Actually,
it
it's
years later. So it's
set
not the
years
same
later. Yeah.
time frame. It's
Uh,
later on.
or Phandelver. They just can't get a
Yeah,
break.
you could actually do that. Like your old characters from the Feldover thing could go, hey, the new group of adventurers take care of that shit.
But still,
Yeah,
there's so many regions. I mean, they're so
But the same
myopic
thing is
on the
true with Acquisitions Incorporated.
there's so myopic about staring at just the Forgotten Realms, and even then just at the Sword Coast, and even then just at that plot of land, and there's so many
Yeah.
more fertile grounds for them to look around at for producing good low level material, and it's kind of a bummer they just kind of reuse the
Stay
Phandelver
there.
area again. Yeah, but it does sound like it's a pretty cool adventure, and I do appreciate that it's differently designed than the starter kit.
And looking at it from a beginner DM trying to learn how to be a DM, they do a much better job in this one in terms of just writing how to do that than how they did in the starter set.
they
So
have.
so comparatively, educationally wise, this one is more supportive than the starter set. Even though the starter set was very good, you typically with the starter set, most people will play it first and then they might run it second. For brand new DMs, I'd say if you really want to just get your feet wet, just grab the Essentials Kit and run it.
All right, what if I were to put the Essentials Kit at number
Like I said, 7.
7? All right, I don't know if we'll get to some interesting talk right now with Avernus because I don't know if it's even top half. I'll put it at 7, and then we're gonna get into Descent into Avernus, which is as of May 2020, still is the most recent, which I think launched like last fall. 5e adventure campaign book.
I ran part of it, yes.
Yeah,
Did you?
so it's yeah. Oh, go ahead. You wanna?
What do you think,
The
Jerome?
the beginning dungeon is a torture.
Yes, the fireball. That fireball.
No, the those stabby the
Like
the
The
people that have
clerics,
hit
they're
do double
awful. Or
damage aura.
all the cultists are over.
This is the
Yeah.
Waterdeep beneath the bathhouse dungeon thing.
Yeah. So like one of
Yeah,
the yeah. Oh,
Baldur's Gate, yeah.
Okay. It's
yeah. Oh, we're going over each other. Sorry.
yeah. We're all like kind of like, oh, we're gonna talk about this. We've been going for almost 2 hours. Alberto, please go ahead.
So yeah, so the first dungeon, it's one of those dungeons where like luckily enough the DM's Guild had like shown like, all right, cool. I'm gonna give it basically fog because it gives you fireball against level 2 characters. And like level 2 characters fireball, if you roll high enough, they all die.
Yep.
And that's just the case, done and deal, stuff like that. But Ascended Anniversary, it's the first time we're actually going outside the material plane, which is cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's cool, like, and like I fell in love with it when it has a Mad Max feel, basically like dirt bikes and cars and stuff like that. I'm like, interesting. How are they going to do this? Like, how are they going to do their war machines? And I have gone to the point where we were playing as a player. I refuse to play as a DM because I don't want to get spoiled as this. And I was like, wow, this is so weird because you got like these different factions, different people, and like the way my DM is working, like it's very weird. Like it's not weird, but it's very cool to see like the different contracts you can, because like when we're at a city, basically the different devils are basically, because you're mortals, and they're basically like coming up to you and they're piling over each other saying, here, sign this contract, and like they're basically like here, I can give you 1,000 gold right now, I can be your servant, hey, if you want a foot rub, I can give you foot rub every day for your life. And like they're giving like these different like favors and stuff like that because you're mortals in a different in hell, and so they're gonna take full advantage of you.
Yeah. No, my players enjoyed the later half of it, but they were just like, wow, this is a meat grinder in the beginning.
Doesn't the actual mod, like the actual book, say something to the effect of just kill them and send them to hell? Maybe not in that fewer words, but
Yeah.
essentially.
Mm-hmm.
That whole introductory sequence is weird. I think there was a huge misstep. Yeah.
In Ezreal, like
Yes.
even the lazy DM, I watched his thing. He was like, "I'm running it this way. Screw that."
Yeah, like that seems so obvious to me, is like tie the players into that city, have them there or at least near there, watch their beloved city get dragged into hell instead of just in this other city, Baldur's Gate, and then have a bunch of refugees show up and then just kind of explain the entire thing that happened and try to make you care. It's a very bizarre. It's like a weird way of shoehorning in Baldur's Gate because they suddenly have to have like Sword Coast City :
A name brand
adventure.
city.
Yeah. And it
We're
would
in the
feel,
name brand city. Let's do Baldur's Gate because
for
why?
Waterdeep,
Because
it
we're
worked.
gonna be doing the new game coming out, Baldur's Gate 3. Therefore,
Yeah,
we have
they're
to do a
tying it into the
Baldur's
video
Gate
game.
module.
I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that part doesn't work at all.
There's so much connected to stories, and they missed such a good opportunity for a starting way. They should have just done like you were at Ithro, or I'm sorry, I'm gonna butcher the name of the city.
Elturel, I think.
Yeah, Elturel. So like Elturel and Waterdeep, they're basically enemies. They're like at a cold war because they don't like each other. One is basically spiritualistic, while the other one is materialistic.
Yeah, yeah, the whole. I mean, it's all an excuse to the fact that we can't send like tier 1 players to hell, and so they have to come up. They have to contrive, these introductory things because
yeah,
again,
you can.
the
I've
problem.
never played any of these games. You've done it a couple of times.
And again, it's that problem of like, and this is a problem throughout a lot of the 5e adventures, which is like the campaign doesn't really start until level 3, 4, or 5. Like they just don't have a way. Like low level doesn't work very well, or for whatever reason, usually isn't very well integrated into a lot of these events. Like Storm King's Thunder doesn't really start until level 3 or 4. You have to go through a bunch of just bullshit at the beginning, and that's a big problem in Descent into Avernus. Now, I think the actual Elturel setting is cool. Like the first thing you get, and you see this city that's being dragged into hell, and there's it's just it's a city on fire with a bunch of demons running around. That whole sequence is really cool. And then once you get to the actual Avernus, there's some neat elements to it, but it's also kind of messy and weird, and I just don't know how to run it as a DM. There's a weird part where you choose between like going down the devil path or the demon path, and it's just kind of a bunch of just encounters.
Yeah.
It just didn't. And you've got this, talk about, you guys are talking about Goofy with Ack Inc. You've got this fucking miniaturized flying holy elephant that is like this super key NPC to everything. It was the like pet familiar whatever of Zariel, and she unlocks like new abilities, and she's like this core NPC, and she's so goofy and weird and stupid, and that whole
how you doing?
it's so weird. I guess it's supposed to like balance.
It's like they took Cortana from Halo and turned her into a Dumbo character.
It's so bizarre.
I did that.
It is bizarre.
And they loved it.
They love.
It is bizarre. It is bizarre in an aspect, and I
kill her.
I will in the aspect say that like Acquisition Corporation, I would still stick to my words. It is still goofy, but the aspect like it's like because the game is so dreadful. Like you basically when you read it, basically your players are going to be experiencing hell. Every all the foods you're going to take, and she's supposed to be the comical relief. So basically, when you torture the players like enough with like basically about like how much they suck and like how much it sucks to be in hell, because it is hell. They don't call it hell for no reason.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be like comical relief in an aspect in a movie. Like when you put in like in a movie, like in a
but
movie
everybody
aspect.
hates that character.
It's the same thing with my players did with Cursive Strawed. Everything is supposed to be all dreadful and everything, and all of a sudden they're like cracking jokes with each other like a comedy routine, and Strahd's like trying to be all like serious.
Yeah, see, that's why as much as folks,
they're gonna stick it up your.
As much as folks love Cursive Strawed, and I've gotten requests to play Cursive Strawed next, I honestly don't think it would be a very good fit for my group, because I don't think we could do like straight gothic horror adventure. Like we need to have like more of a.
At least it wouldn't have snakes in it.
With that, yeah. That's very true. There's no snakes in Ravenloft. All right,
I think Out of the Abyss.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I think Out of the Abyss would be the perfect next one for you. I mean, you could be goofy with like how the you. I can see that.
Yeah,
The only thing is you just need to have a party that's actually somewhat good. That's all.
Yeah, like actual non-asshole characters. Yeah.
Yeah, like as long as you have that, I think they'll have fun.
Paladin-like character.
They're all playing renegade shepherds. Yeah. Where do we put Descent into Avernus, though?
Yeah.
Like
maybe right above Out of the Abyss.
Yeah, to me, I'm thinking somewhere in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I might put it below Out of the Abyss, honestly. I actually kind of like it at number 10.
Well, the thing is, it's the same aspect where, like, Out of the Abyss, like, it gives you a map. It gives you a map, and it doesn't give you, like, it's like, Out of the Abyss gives you, like, a huge overview of the Underdark, and it gives you shades of, like, colors of, like, where are some locations. But Out of the, Descent to Avernus gives you locations of general. At least it gives you what it looks like in some aspect and some maps. So you got to put in that aspect where in the map aspect and the dungeon aspect, they have done a good execution. I mean, not the first dungeon, of course, but with the way of like basic exploration and stuff, and tying with the story with like how Out of the Abyss is like story. Out of the Abyss drops you in the middle of the book.
But I kind of like that. I like the introduction for Out of the Abyss, and I specifically don't like the introduction for Descent into Avernus. And preference-wise, I like the Underdark more than I do
Hell.
D&D's version of Hell. Yeah, even though they do they do some cool stuff with the war machines and like the Mad Max thing. That's kind of neat.
Like I like the things that you reviewed. That one that had the multi things off the DM's Guild with all the different levels of Hell.
Yeah,
I like that.
The heist one
better than Descent into Avernus.
Oh wow.
But that's just me.
And that one you went to actually like each of the levels of Hell. That was cool because all the levels are like very thematic. That one's like Dungeon of the Mad Mage, except it makes sense because all the different levels of Hell, like here's the ice level of Hell, and here's the like super urban city industrialized, level of Hell like that. Yeah, those are pretty cool.
You could probably link Avernus with the Waterdeep one, because if you're running the devil people.
Mm-hmm. Oh, the people that are worshiping Asmodeus.
Yeah.
The Castellanter family.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, like if you look at the actual cover of Waterdeep, it's the two people behind the person in the hood, but below the guy with the hat.
Nobles.
Yeah,
the two
nobles. Yeah, that's the Brigand Darth guy. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, so do we want to put it above or below Out of the Abyss? 'Cause it sounds like it's going right in the middle.
Above.
I'd go above. I think the end game for Avernus is a bit better than for Abyss.
Yeah, it's rushed.
Agreed.
Very rushed.
So
sorry,
move 7, 8, and 9 up,
Okay.
and then put Avernus at 9.
Put Avernus at 9. Okay. Okay.
Any last minute changes? as
Do we
look at
have
this
our
as a
ranking?
whole?
Yeah.
Well,
Certainly took us enough time, I think. All right, let's
Yeah.
go over. I'm not going to go over. I'm going to just say them, and then we can say whether we agree with this or not. Number 15 as the weakest published D&D 5e campaign book, Hoard of the Dragon Queen.
yay.
Number 14, its sister sequel, The Rise of Tiamat.
Yeah.
I don't have an opinion on that one.
Number 13, Tales from the Yawning Portal.
I highly disagree, but overall, most people have lots of dissenting opinions. I just think it's
Yeah, you're not looking. There's no story.
It's interesting because I always
Yeah.
thought it would be near the middle, but compared to some of these others, I'm actually thinking, okay, I can see where a lot of these would end up above it too, just because, again, especially if we're weighing the criteria on, having an overall adventure.
Yeah,
Number
judging
12,
by
Dungeon of the Mad
quality.
Mage. Kind of the same reason as Tales. It's not really a good adventure book. It just has a lot of good dungeons in it. And same with Ghosts of Saltmarsh, though it's kind of hard to rank the three of those with each other, honestly. I think I weighted Ghosts a little bit more because it actually does have a little bit better of a story and has some more mechanics and things, maybe than the others. But those three are kind of, if we're judging by tiers, those are pretty similar.
Yeah.
Then I think we comfortably get into the mid tier of campaign stories, which are all the ones that are not bad, just not stellar, which would be Out of the Abyss at number 10, Descent into Avernus at number 9, Storm King's Thunder at number 8, and Princes of the Apocalypse at 7. I think those are all solidly mid-tier adventures, and within those four, you could probably switch those around differently, but I think those are solidly mid-tier. Then I think begins the upper echelon of what we consider the superior 5e campaign adventure, starting with number 6, the Essentials Kit. What is the actual adventure on that one? Icespire Peak? Dragon of Icespire Peak?
Dragon Icespire Peak. Yep.
Dragon of Icespire
Yes.
Peak, okay. Number 5, Waterdeep Dragon Heist. That's the one that I would dissent on, but I agree that there's good work stuff you can do in there. Number 4, and this is my compromise, is I got my number 4, Acquisitions Incorporated, which I absolutely
Maybe one
adore.
I disagree with.
Again, it's a preference in what you like. Personally, I'll put this pretty low on my bar.
Yeah.
It's because but again, it's knowing like how I'm sorry, I have an old soul, but I'm like 21. Like, but I love the older generations of Dungeons and Dragons. Or the deadlier that is, the funner is.
There you go.
The only
You
one
should
I
join
don't
one of
really
my
own.
games.
Oh yeah. Number 3, the original starter set for 5e, which is telling. I mean, this was 2014, and this is number 3. That's pretty impressive. They kind of knocked it out of the park with this one. Lost Mine of Phandelver. Yeah. Number 2, Tomb of Annihilation. Obviously, I'm a bit biased on that one, but it's got a lot of really good. I mean, the whole like jungle Indiana Jones thing just works so well, and it's got so many good pieces.
It's number 1 in your heart.
Amazing maps. It's number 1 in my heart with a bullet. And then the actual number 1 that we have is Cursive Strawed. So we seem to agree with the overall opinion that Strawed is still the probably the best use of theme. The Ravenloft Gothic theme. Strahd's an actual great villain. It's got a good balance of a good adventure that feels like there's enough areas, but it's also not gigantic like Storm King's. And it's got that really great mega dungeon crawl at the end, but it's not still like too crazy of a mega dungeon crawl. That is our ranking for number 1 through 15. Holy crap. Y'all, we have gone on for 2 hours. That is way longer than what we usually do. So I appreciate all of you so much. Thank you, Alberto, Sean, Sam, Jerome, Jordan, Corey, for joining me for this month's DM Roundtable. I am Eric. I hope to see you all again for next month's DM Roundtable discussion. Stay safe. Stay sane out there.
Right. Like,
Bye.
but.
Bye.